microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, pistols and the fondle slap of choice, I don't know when that was, doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether the cartoon comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to just read two sources whenever I try to prove out one of these. It's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed on another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from FEMA Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And we are live. It is Thursday night on UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. Of course, I'm Chuck Ochelli. And this evening, what I've decided to do is bring in young Mr. Dylan Wade. I think you're with me, sir.
I'm here.
All right. And we're just going to have a little discussion tonight and see how things go. Of course, a little bit before I went to air, we saw that the White House was locked down for a suspicious package on the North Lawn, right, Dylan?
I believe so. I know it was because of a package. I don't know what lawn.
Yeah, well, I think that's what the Daily Mail said. But I believe ABC News, Reuters, a couple other agencies were also reporting pretty much the same facts. So, who knows what that actually means, but here we go again, right? Homeland Insecurity and all their funds and all their fun. Can they even protect the North Lawn? So, Dylan, how you doing today?
Good, you?
I've been better. I got this little bit of a chemtrail cough, like I was telling you off the air. I don't know what's going on there, but I do notice that there is a greater amount of these damn things over my head in North Carolina, I'll tell you that, than there was in New Jersey.
Yeah, we only get one or two every couple weeks. Maybe one a day, probably.
And you know what? Before I get foolish and forgetful like I often do, Dylan does the Truth Speaks Network on YouTube, but it looks like you're going to be joining another network shortly.
Yeah, I'll be joining Shaken Awake Radio. It's not up yet. The website's still being worked on, but we launch August 1st.
Right, August 1st, and actually an interesting network because we're going to see Roger Landry, who's been the most frequent guest on my show, and quite a few other people of interest. Barry Prince, who's been on now twice, and I believe we'll be making an appearance again on Tuesday. We'll see how that goes. So anyway, Dylan, what did you want to discuss tonight, sir?
Well, you're an expert on JFK, so let's go there, I guess.
Well, I have no end to the things I can say on that topic, so...
I know you don't.
Here we go.
I ask you one question, and it takes 2 hours before I can ask the second.
Well, is that just because I talk too much, or is that just because I have a lot of knowledge, or what? I don't know.
See all of the above.
All of the above. See, he chooses an answer on the multiple choice test that doesn't necessarily exist, but it's okay. I like it. You should think outside of the box. And you know what? before we go any further, this was exactly the guy that Barry brought up on Tuesday, where he said that there's this young guy that he knows that is very much into all this stuff and is out there broadcasting and doing his thing, and has a slightly different point of view from me and whatever else, but seems to know a hell of a lot more about the world than any of us did at the age of 15. So that's really why I like talking to you, Dylan. I've actually spent a lot of time talking to you off the air too.
Yeah, we talk a lot otherwise.
Well, it is an adventure, sir.
That it is.
It is. But, okay, so on the JFK topic, let's get into a specific area.
Before we go to that, do you want to discuss bricks?
Well, go ahead. If you want to start talking about that stuff, we can do that too.
I kind of wanted to get your take on it because I mentioned it off air, but we just got sidetracked. Well,
to me, this is just another stepping stone to what's really going to happen here. My listeners and anybody who listens to this network is, of course, aware, especially if you listen to, say, like Boiler Room Radio, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You definitely get a serious dose of this kind of stuff. And you're aware that the death of the petrodollar is going to be the death nail for the dollar anyway. You look at the workings of other nations. I mean, we saw the prerequisite to this announcement by the BRICS nations with the Russian Federation and the Chinese, starting to maneuver their currencies and change their way of doing business. We're looking at, very large populations which are going to be dealing in currencies that are actually going to be backed by something more than a promise, like our Federal Reserve note is, right? So, we're seeing a global shift here, and I think that that we're only being told part of the story. There's my trip on my tongue. Only being told part of the story here.
Or will ever be told.
Oh, absolutely, because, at the end of the day, we're still looking at that looming storm of derivative bubbles that, and I do say bubbles, I'm not misspeaking there. There's more than one, and all this crap is just floating over this entire system, waiting to pour down on our heads like a torrential rain, as if it was the time of Noah's Ark. And nobody knows what they're going to be able to do about that. I mean, QE infinity is not going to fix a damn thing. So I don't know what you have to say about it, but, the collapse of the dollar is imminent, this is for sure, but then again, you know what, they fooled me before because they keep manipulating and playing the same game, using the Wall Street casino and the other affiliated casinos to prop things up and shuffle things around, and, no matter how much you move the furniture, the house is still on fire, baby, so, it is what it is. It's a sad state of affairs, and, is there time to correct it is the question in my mind. And I don't know. I got to be honest with you, because, the idea that we were dealing with a fractional reserve system for the longest time, and then somebody took off the handcuffs at one point and said, look, you don't even have to, deal with the, 10% worth of holdings in order to put out the 90% worth of loans. Then they just started making up their own numerical computations about this, and this is what we're dealing with to this day. At this point, it's just you have a license to print money or you don't. And, being one of those people who doesn't have a license to print money or isn't affiliated with somebody who has a license to print money, I don't know what that's like. And at the end of the day, the money's backed by nothing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part of it that I don't understand. How do they keep it propped up so easily? How come they've been able to play the game this long?
Because nobody questions it. Let's be honest. I mean, there are, those of us out here who do ask some questions, but for the majority of our lives, more than, religion or your government or anything else, nobody bothers to question, what is money really about? What is it that we're actually trading? We're trading debt and drawing from the supply of debt based on our labor, which is a completely ass-backwards concept to begin with. But again, nobody questions it. realistically, it's just one of those facts of life. You're taught this is money. You need it to get things, and this is the way life works. You know, the concept of barter, the concept of trade on a local level, the concept of, you know, offering your labor in exchange for goods, or offering your labor in exchange for labor, or working together as communities. These things have been so far removed from at least the American population for so long. You know, they're distant memories, you know, in the same category as dinosaurs at this point. You know, and there are people trying to get back to that, and I applaud them. But you know, you're very much fighting the tide in a canoe. You know, go ahead.
You may be fighting in whatever analogy you use. Sorry, I floated out of my head. But
I was saying you're floating like the tides of the ocean in a canoe. You're trying to battle against, you know, the ebb and flow of the crashing waves on the shore in a, you know, a two-man canoe is basically what it's like.
I agree, but I think when you have something like what's going on now about to happen, I think we can get back to there with what's going on now.
Well, you know, the good news for those of us who have, you know, somewhat of an anarchist sort of bent to us, is that there's going to be no choice at some point here. You know, unless you know, the powers that be offer us the alternative, which, you know, it seems to me as though that's usually part of the plan, is here's your problem, now we'll let you react, now here's your solution, and your solution increases the bonds of slavery from the original problem anyway, so.
Oh, yeah, that, I suspect that, but then again, what do I know?
Well, yeah. I'm not an economist either. I'm not a financial expert, that's for sure. I'm just going on my basic gut observations here. Which, by the way, if anybody wants to join in on the discussion, the phone lines are open, 718-717-8296. And, of course, if you have me on your Skype list, you can, you know, join in that way. And anybody who doesn't have me on their Skype list that wants to, you're welcome to send me a contact request. Charles.Ochelli, and if you don't know how to spell Ochelli, look at the banner. Pretty easy. Anyway, so that's all I have to say about that. I don't know what else you want to talk about there, because, you know, to me it's just one of those stories where it has not fully unfolded yet. And
no, but it is good to at least mention it.
No, absolutely.
Because depending on the outcome of this, July 15th will be remembered as either the day the start of the collapse occurred, or the day World War III was put into motion, basically.
This is a possibility, you know, and to me, we've been teetering on the financial collapse, and I'm pretty sure that's a jet going over my head right now, probably dropping a chemtrail. Anyway, the fact that we have had this continuously teetering sort of situation financially, and, you know, let's define what a world war is. I mean, my understanding, at least from a very basic sort of high school history perspective, was that if you had, you know, a great number of nations engaged in multiple theaters of warfare across, I think it was 3 continents, you would have a condition where a world war could be recognized.
So we're already there.
And yeah, see, this is the odd thing to me, is that, in my opinion, we're already at that point, and we're still not being told about a lot of the military actions that are occurring in many nations. You know,
Somalia.
Well, there you go, and you know, our constant presence in over 150 places, 150 other nations where we have bases and all this stuff. You know, we have the condition of the American empire having been far too outstretched, and although we're not necessarily engaged in combat everywhere, there is enough of a atmosphere of warfare to say that we're almost in a state of World War III at this point. Of course, it has not come to our doorstep as of yet. You know, again, these are all my opinions, but you know, but I don't see how much somebody could really argue with that. You know, and of course, when you do have a bad financial situation in any particular place, You also have one of the greatest and most common provocations for greater widespread warfare to be initiated by a nation that's financially troubled. So,
there was an event today. The Malaysian plane was shot down. Did you see that?
No, I didn't catch that one. You know what it is? I skip through anything that says Malaysian plane in my newsfeed now. So
I don't blame you, honestly. There was a Malaysian plane shot down that was flying over the Ukraine by Russian missiles.
No kidding. I missed that.
Interesting that it came about 2 days. 2 days after BRICS was formed.
And then
I wonder how they'll spin that.
Probably accidental.
Well,
we thought it was.
The article I'm reading on Alex Jones, it says the U.S. blames Russia.
Well, you know what? Even though it did come from Jones Corporation, I got to say that's fairly valid too. Is that they'll probably bat the blame back and forth. That's something that happens. But all this is stage. Of
course it all is. But my point being, could they be gearing up for framing Russia as the bad guy? Probably.
Well, yeah, but that's been going on for a while. But what we're not engaged in yet is a significant amount of surrogate warfare, where U.S.-backed nations end up engaging in either civil war with another part of their nation that is backed by the Russian Federation in quotes, or the supposed enemies like China or whatever like that. We have to start engaging more with those type of surrogate affairs. Very much like...
Well, we are. We're starting to, at least.
It's beginning to happen, but it has to become, a bit more entrenched before we actually have...
I think we'll see something something big happen in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I would definitely say by the end of the year, we're going to have a significant shift in policy regarding the global war situation. I mean, the obvious thing, of course, is the ratcheting up of the situation in Iraq and of course in Syria. But that's not necessarily the tinderbox that's going to light it.
No, I think the box that's going to light it is actually not even going to be Ukraine. I think we're going to see something happen with Poland.
Well, that would be interesting based on the the fact that we have the NATO nations, right? Having been on the doorstep and then encroaching into what was previously Soviet territory over and over again. And Poland is one of those nice little choke points right there for that kind of conflict, that's for sure.
I think we'll see something arise over there.
Yeah, and I've stated over and over again that I think that the African theater is going to be the big... Yeah, that's going to be the big part of the chessboard.
I agree to an extent. The only thing I disagree with when it comes to that is, sure, it'll probably be extremely significant, but I don't think it's going to be the big piece on the chessboard. I think we're going to see a lot of bigger pieces in Europe and Asia.
Yeah, but see, the Europeans are a little bit gun-shy when it comes to, conducting serious war on their own ground anymore. I mean, they took... The removal from the problems that occurred, in the 20th century is not far enough that there are not still ruins in plenty of European countries from that.
Well, I agree with you on that, but you've got this quote-unquote Cold War starting between Russia and NATO.
Well, yeah, but the Cold War, again, is one of those protracted events where you end up with a whole lot of surrogate warfare and not any direct confrontation.
Right. I think Cuba's going to be a big player, too. I mean, they're not in the news anymore, so...
Yeah, but, Cuba's a predictor. I mean, we can go back to, again, the JFK situation. We had the missile crisis during his administration, the Bay of Pigs, of course, during his administration, and there it was being utilized as, unfortunately, it was being utilized as a piece of theater that was relatively safe for the larger group, which was the Soviet Union at the time, which had a greater landmass and had a lot of things except greater technology, because all that was being overblown, of course, the supposed missile gap and everything else. And there's a whole lot of study one can do about that. But I think Cuba's not really the large player. I wouldn't hang too much on that.
Not a large player, but I think there'll be a player in this.
It's a possibility, but I think there's much better, much more photogenic areas of Central America and South America to utilize for that kind of purpose. And I still say that the African nations provide us with plenty of stages for this kind of stuff.
They do, but
everything from Libya to South Africa, in fact, could all be wonderful little political chess pieces one way or another.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of chess pieces. The entire Middle East is a chessboard.
Plus the natural resources, and one last thing, of course, is just like with every other major opening of continental conflict, I'm wondering what the big drug will be that'll come out of Africa, because the Middle East gave us new heroin crops. Okay, plenty of new poppy fields. Vietnam gave us the Golden Triangle. South America, of course, we had the crack and cocaine epidemic in this country. So I'm wondering what the street drug will be that'll be produced from Africa. I'm really not familiar with what it is they grow so well there, but I'm sure that there's something that can be exploited by Big Pharma and the DEA/CIA/ whatever else alphabet soup that'll once again push another great drug on us. So one way or another, that's another thing to look for, is the drug trends, because there'll probably be some new stuff opening up. From all of a sudden things will be imported. How is it that cocoa plants became the big thing? Well, because we had plenty of military/intelligence assets in South America where cocoa plants grow really, really well. And we all know about Afghanistan and troops guarding those poppy fields, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, that one's obvious at this point.
Mm-hmm. Easy to follow, and of course, at the time that we wanted to use, the Mexican and the Guatemalan and Honduras and all those areas. At that time, of course, we have a little change in the game because of the legalization of marijuana in some states, which caused the demand to drop, because there was plenty of weight actually still coming through Mexico, just coming through the southern border as far as marijuana shipments and all that. Of course, there was other illicit drugs coming through there as well, but they were a secondary concern. I mean, Mexican marijuana growth was pretty good for a while there, but now that game is changing too, and I'm still asking questions about that immigrant situation, but not getting very good answers, to be honest with you.
I'm gonna stay away from that. I don't know. I don't like to talk about that because I don't have all the facts, and I'm still conflicted.
Yeah, I have exactly the same problem, and I know that some people are really unhappy with that, but because I see both sides of the issue, and unfortunately, I'm of two minds on a lot of issues. There's not many things where I'm not willing to listen to somebody else's opinion, or willing to examine newly discovered evidence or facts about anything, really. I'm kind of open-minded, even though I do have my convictions to some degree, not just on that subject, but on just about everything else. So.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of issues that I have a strong conviction on, but there are a few.
No, but you know what? You've gotten to a point where, at the very least you wanted to, well, this is fun. At the very least you wanted to ask questions, which is the greatest part of, the greatest part of what you're doing, and that's really why I enjoy talking to you so much, because you're asking questions, you're examining things for yourself, and you're doing a little known, lost sort of art, as far as I'm concerned, among especially your generation, but Yeah, every other generation as well. It's not like people my age or a little bit younger or even a little bit older or even seemingly all that much smarter. They've lost the concept of critical thought and self-determination. So,
well, with all of my limits, I have to ask questions.
Yeah, but as much as you seem to be a bit limited, you're really not.
Airplane crashed.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Another Malaysian airline crash. She was just showing me the story.
Really?
Yeah.
Another one?
I don't know if it's the same. Yeah, that's a good point, Kim. Thanks. Will they find the wreckage this time?
They'll probably say it's MH370.
That would be amazing because it's been up in the air now for what, 4 months, 5 months?
Well, CNN stopped covering it 24/7, so it must have gotten old.
Well, the CNN stopped covering a lot of things.
They stopped covering the pilot's favorite coffee.
Yeah, his favorite coffee, his flight simulator, his political persuasion, his possible sexual habits, and everything else that may or may not be associated to any of it, but okay.
This plane crash. Now we're going to tell you his favorite kind of coffee.
Right.
I know that has a lot of relation to the topic, but I can't even with them anymore. I give up on them.
Well, see, but that's my point, and I know that people think it's kind of silly that I bring this up, but they've also shifted to this sort of documentary format. And I brought up the one episode about the 60s, that's for sure, because, of course, it was JFK-focused. But I watched a couple other ones, too, and they were just as ridiculous. Just as ridiculous. The Vietnam War, that was a ridiculous sort of anti-intellectual, not examining any of the facts, still telling us the same BS stories that, that they were telling us in the 60s. Go ahead, Dylan.
To be fair, they do that with everything.
Well, yeah, but, there was a point in time, and I know I'm going to probably get hit for this, too. There was a point in time that CNN seemed to be interested in breaking news, seemed to be interested in actual journalism. I know it's a Ted Turner-owned property, and I know that, that's evil by default right there, and, God help us, anything involving Jane Fonda, who is, of course, associated with Ted Turner, makes a lot of people's skin crawl and all that kind of good stuff.
Wow.
I point to the John Barber interview I did, though, where he explained that when he had her on his show in the 70s, that he wound up calling her a hairy bitch to her face. I thought that was hysterical. But if you guys go back and listen, I think it was the second time I had John Barber on. Yeah, he told that whole story about Jane Fonda, and it was funny.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
To be fair about the CNN thing and real journalism, I think most websites have lost that. And I'm going to get hit for this, too. I think even in the truther community, we've lost it.
Well, credibility has gone out the window with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because there are people that started out really solid. And, here's my opinion about one of them really quickly. Jim Fetzer is a guy who I have interacted with. I've been on his show, and people have given me a lot of problems about the fact that I appeared on his show. But the guy, has really shifted his focus regarding what it was he was interested in studying. And at this point, he has gone from bringing in others who were experts in fields to study the scientific aspects of the JFK assassination, to study the scientific aspects of the Wellstone plane crash, things like this, to begin to study 9/11 truth from a very serious vantage point, to now he is very much involved in the, Sandy Hook was a complete fabrication kind of stuff, which, I'm not going to agree with that. I don't care what anybody says. There's no way in the world that I'm going to agree that Sandy Hook was a complete stage show, that nothing happened there. Now, to say that we have been lied to again, well, duh. This is where we're at.
Yeah.
To say that there was a cover-up, to say that it's now been seasoned on as a football, these things are all valid. But I mean, following the arc of some of the stuff that the guy has done, he's gotten to a point where everything is fakery. And, you know, at some point I'm going to invite him on my show, and I'm sure that's going to be an authentic show. Well, I understand that everything is fakery to some degree, but, you know, but after a while, if you start deciding that everything in the world has been completely fabricated, then what can you believe at all? Even your own research is based on some sort of element of trust in the sources that you're going after. I mean, this is why I always encourage people to not just do their research on the internet. You know, you read stories about things and statements people made, and quite often, if you contact those people yourself, okay, and I know that's, you know, a horribly crazy thing to do, and oh my God, you're going to be a stalker, and who knows, you know, but, you know, if you just sort of approach somebody as an independent journalist, or as a fact finder, or as an author, or something like that, and you just allow them to speak, in a lot of cases, you'll find that that the stories that are being circulated, the statements that are being seized upon, you know, by even the people in the so-called truth movement are completely inaccurate as well. And I'm not interested in supporting anybody or destroying anybody in the truth movement. I'm really interested in trying to find the closest thing to the facts that I can, you know, without having been a personal witness to the situations myself. Go ahead, Dylan.
To find the real...
I'm sorry, you dropped out.
To find the real facts, and like you were saying, though, the truth community has its credibility in a lot of aspects, because all they do is this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, without examining anything. And I don't even look at it anymore because it's easy to fabricate evidence.
Well, yeah, this is a problem.
I go off of...
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I think
I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Your Skype's dropping out a little bit, and I'm sorry. I do hate to have dead air, so I talk a lot, and I'm kind of obnoxious, sorry. But just like... go ahead.
You're dropping out, too, a bit on my end.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully...
You're dropping out, too, on my end.
Hopefully the broadcast is going through. That's all we need. You know, just like, you know, our friend who does the souvenir event...
You want me to check?
Yeah, it's okay. I think we're all right. You know, just like my friend who does the souvenir event on Saturday.
All right, I'm going to drop out and come back in.
Go ahead. Good. Just like Walter with the souvenir event on Saturdays here on UCY likes to discuss, you know, when you are taking the time to only disprove things and you're presenting no evidence of your own, no positive sort of reinforcement of the facts, without ever stating, you know, what you believe the facts are, that automatically makes you rather suspect. And that's something, I don't remember if that was something we were discussing off the air or on the air, but I got to tell you, that was something that stuck with me because he's absolutely right. Most of the people that are very much, you know, people that should not be given a whole lot of credence, let's just say, you know, regarding their ability to find facts, are the people that sit there and are just contrarians. They have nothing to add to the discussion themselves, no facts to add to the discussion themselves, not even any sort of positive speculation. When they spend their entire time in deconstruction, you know, it does make their conclusions and their credibility suspect. And I always advise people to not listen to people that do nothing but tear down others. You know, and I'm no paragon of information regarding this or anything. It's just a matter of what I see and what I can observe. Most likely, that is a good indicator of someone's lack of credibility. So, anyway, Dylan, how is it looking? All right.
Well, the connection sucks right now. I can barely hear you. It keeps dropping out. And there's a delay between what I say and what you say, so I don't know.
All right. Well, again, I hope everybody's getting this, and you know. Anyway, let's move on. And I know this is everybody's favorite thing to do. So go ahead and fire away, Dylan. You had some questions in mind, or did you have any other topics you wanted to bring up before we go further?
We can go further. I didn't have any questions. I thought we were discussing a specific topic.
Well, we went off
on the whole event.
Okay. Well, just pick a spot, my friend, and I'll and I'll see what I can do.
How about we go to why it was impossible for him to do what he did.
The impossibility of the 3-shot scenario from the school book depository building? Well,
yeah.
The primary problems are this. And let me just make a quick discrediting statement about one thing. A lot of people believe that in the James Altkins photos, there's photo number 6, which is actually primarily of the limousine heading toward the photographer, and the initial reaction of Kennedy reaching toward his throat, not actually grabbing his throat like some people think, can be seen through the windshield of the limousine, the X-100, which was actually designed initially for Eisenhower. It wasn't designed specifically for Kennedy, but was the so-called famous bubble top limousine. Anyway, you can actually see Kennedy beginning to react to what should be the first shot. And most famously, people have blown up a very small portion of what they call the Altkins 6 photograph to display a portion of the school book depository where there is a doorway. Now, in that doorway, and if you do just a search on Doorway Man JFK, you'll find that there are many people out there that believe that Lee Harvey Oswald is pictured in the doorway at the time of the shots being fired, and therefore could not have been the shooter in the 6th floor. There are many experts who are, or so-called experts, let me say, that are out there trying to disprove the idea that this is another school book depository building employee named Billy Lovelady. I absolutely believe that it's Billy Lovelady, and I'll tell you why. I obtained a copy of the Altkins 6 photograph from the Chicago Tribune archives myself. Took it and blew it up many times. I projected it and reproduced it, and I've actually created prints of the photograph, and this is not all digital stuff either. I got to tell you something else, and I tried to demonstrate this on YouTube. People that rely on digital representations of photographs are really limiting their ability to obtain information, because when you get down to it, the resolution on the digital photographs, which have been transferred from the original standard chemical process, you lose a great deal of information. I can tell you that by comparing the JFK autopsy photographs, which I obtained from the James K. Fox set, which was a Secret Service agent who somehow came up with a group of negatives of shots of Kennedy on the autopsy table, and he held them for many years. They're the bootleg copies that we actually see out there being circulated, or some representation thereof, because quite literally the original photographs are produced in such a way that you need a special viewfinder. They're stereoscopic views of the body and all that, which do create a three-dimensional effect. And if you can get into the National Archives, you need actually the permission of the Kennedy family and their attorney, Burke Marshall, to get in there to see these things for yourself. And very few researchers out there who make many claims about the autopsy photographs have ever seen them. But back to the Altkins photo, my copy, which came from the archives of the Chicago Tribune, pretty much shows exactly what Oliver Stone, who took some time to examine this photograph, also says. And I don't know if he's ever said it publicly, but I've heard him say it at a presentation before, that he was thoroughly convinced that was Billy Lovelady standing in that doorway, and so am I. There are many people out there that figure that this very small, approximately, I don't know, in the original photograph, if it's printed normally, Let's just say it's printed in an 8x10 fashion. You're talking about something that's less than a quarter-inch wide being blown up, for the world to see. And when you do that, you can very clearly see it's not Oswald when they say it is. There's a great deal of argument about this, and some of the old-school researchers, like Harold Weisberg, even said that they thought it was Oswald in the doorway. But it's not. Now, that being said, I don't believe that Oswald was in the sixth floor window either, because at the time, right leading up to a few seconds before the shooting, and due to the awkward stance because there was a pipe next to that window and everything else, and the window was only half open, the awkward sort of positioning of somebody to have to actually pull it off is remarkably difficult. So just the physical act of positioning the shooter is questionable based on the photographic evidence. Oswald, by the way, was most likely, according to a story which only came out recently because it was very sensitive to this woman's death. She didn't want it released. But if you check in the book Absolute Proof by Robert Groden, you get the full account of Oswald getting the change for the soda that he had in his hand when Marion Baker pulled the gun on him in the second floor snack room at the time of the shooting. And to the best of my knowledge, after talking to some school book depository employees and examining the interviews of others, including people like Victoria Adams, who was actually on the steps in an intervening place where Oswald would have had to have traveled down the steps, and talking to other employees who understood where the elevator was at the time of the assassination. It was stuck on the fourth floor, and all that other good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Oswald was likely on the first or second floor of the school book depository building, and 90 seconds later he had Marion Baker's revolver pointed at his ribs, while he had a Coke in his hand, by the way. So there's an impossibility, and that's not even to mention the weapon. You want to talk about the weapon?
Sure, but before we get to that, when did you come across the evidence about this new guy that you're talking about did it?
Which new guy are we talking about?
Billy, what's his last name?
Oh, no, I didn't say he did anything. He's just standing in the doorway. The character that a lot of people have examined that small piece of the photograph say is Oswald is not, in my opinion. Now, like I said, there's many people that have been working on this much longer than me, many people that have been put in a whole lot more time and have a great more photographic expertise than I do that agree as well, because, I got a lot of crap for this a couple of years ago when I stated that it was definitely Billy Lovelady in the doorway, and of course people immediately said, well, you can't see a damn thing anyway, so how could you know? But I also defer to other people who, I think know a little something about film, like Oliver Stone. I think the man knows how to photograph things. I'm just guessing. And I think that he examined this evidence, and I know that he examined this evidence because I talked to some of the research people that worked with him on it. The people that took apart Jim Marr's book for him a little bit. The people that made him go get John Newman's book on the assassination. The people that, that definitely turned him on to Fletcher Prouty. And, who was part of the inspiration, of course, for the Donald Sutherland character in JFK. The Mr. X character, well, there was one other book used. Of course, that was the Jim Garrison book, because we have the whole Jim Garrison aspect, because really the movie JFK tells a couple of stories. It tells the Garrison story, as well as telling, the Oswald/assassination frame-up story, a little bit. And quite honestly, for the fact that the JFK Records Act had not been passed yet, because it was passed as a result of that film causing a public outcry. The fact that he had so much very, very correct in that film is kind of amazing. And, if you want to look for the real historical argument about that, you can get a very cheap book, probably for about $1.50 on Amazon at this point, called JFK, the Book of the Film, where they actually annotate the script and show you exactly what the reasoning is behind just about every scene in that movie. And although there's some, artistic license taken, and there's some, compiling of characters, sort of to create a composite individual out of a couple of individuals. Generally, if you dissect a couple of them, like the Kevin Bacon character, is not, a real person per se, but is actually again, a compilation of a few different people, including, the guy's name, Perry Russo, right? Perry Raymond Russo is the main inspiration for the Kevin Bacon character, who was one of Garrison's witnesses at the trial. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to do this to you. I gotta drop out for 15 minutes. I just gotta eat something real fast. I will definitely come back, though.
No problem. Your demands are...
I'm sorry, I didn't know what was going on.
No sweat.
Somebody just got home.
No sweat. Go ahead, Dylan. It's not a big deal.
All right, I'll be back in 15, 20 minutes.
Jump back in whenever you want to, sir. Anyway, I think I can hold down... No problem. I think I can hold down the fort for a good 15 minutes. Hell, if I would have just kept answering that question, I probably could have done that. Listen, if you guys want to change the stream or the discussion here, by all means, join in. 718-717-8296. Or if you have me on Skype, I'll just add you into the call. It's fine by me. Obviously, I can discuss the JFK topic at length all the time. But back to that photograph thing. I got to say, I got really annoyed, actually, even approaching some of the people that proclaim that Oswald is photographed in the doorway there. There's a lot of mistakes that are being made by people that represent photographs out there to be certain things. For many years, I even believed that Jack Ruby had been photographed in Dealey Plaza, and he's not present there. That's actually just a blurry sort of misrepresentation. If you compare it to the recently discovered news footage, and you sync up the time with that photograph, you'll find that although the guy looks sort of similar, we've now identified who that individual was, and it's not Jack Ruby. It's a totally different assassination witness who happened to have glasses and a similar hairline. When photographed in the bright sunlight, though, by an amateur's camera, it does look as though it is him. You also have people passing around these photographs of what they proclaim to be George H.W. Bush, or a George H.W. Bush lookalike being present in Dealey Plaza. This is also inaccurate. Although I do happen to have a sort of friendly accord with a guy named John Hankey who would definitely like to argue that point with me someday, I'm sure. And I'm thinking about bringing on some more argumentative guests coming up real soon, because I think you guys would enjoy that, but not just JFK stuff. Got a couple of people that have actually sort of done a Benedict Arnold on us on the 9/11 situation that have approached me recently and asked me if I haven't lost my mind because I still believe certain things. And, Building 7 is a coincidence and all this other fun stuff. This is what I'm being communicated. I don't even know what to make of that sometimes because, it seems like nobody's listening to me, but then again, some of the very strangest people that I would never imagine are actually listening to what I have to say. And I guess a couple of my old shows where I discussed some stuff about 9/11, I mean, the best one I did was with Richard Gage on, and I was going to have him on again recently. I may do that. I don't know if you guys are still interested in that topic as well, but probably a whole lot more than the JFK topic because everybody thinks that it's unrelated to everything now. But it's not. It's really not. It's really the wholesale public execution of somebody that did have a conscience when it came to the people, one way or another. Although, again, I got to thank Mr. Souvenir for presenting me with a piece of legislation that was passed during Kennedy's time period where, my goodness, it looks like the most disarming piece of legislation I've ever seen. And, for those of us that are worried about a gun grab, it looks like it was already well underway in 1961. If you look at this particular piece of legislation, which I can't recall the name of at the moment, but I know I have it somewhere. I saved it for sure. And I'm waiting to hear about that, by the way, Walter. I want to hear what the response was from the from the Chamber of Commerce there. But anyway, so as much as the world changes, it doesn't change, right? And as much as these historical events seem to be unrelated to now and unrelated to today, let me ask you a question. Do you think, just in general, even if you just take this sort of very shallow viewpoint of the mainstream historian, if you take a look at the actions and legislation during the 2+ years, the say 2.5 years that the 1,000 days, let's just say, of Kennedy's administration. If you take a look at the actions, the tenure, the attitude of that administration, the actual efforts, if you take a look at that, would you not prefer them to the Obama administration? I think I would. And I was really baffled to see, Caroline Kennedy endorsing this guy. And believe me, I didn't need to see him go into office to know that there was a problem right away. And I wouldn't even say that I was, completely asleep or completely awake at that point, but I knew something was wrong with him right away. And I got to say, though, I did have a little fun this week also passing along the Michelle Obama is a Man video. That I'm sure I made a few extra hits on that YouTube channel, because there's one really good one. There's a bunch of them out there, actually, where they show you these photographs and stuff. And I'm not even saying that I completely endorse it, but it is definitely something to look at. And it does change the idea in your mind about, about who it is that we supposedly have representing us on the world stage, But, hey, who am I, right? Anyhow, yeah, I asked many, many times, do you think that we'd be better off had Kennedy not been killed? I mean, had we been given a second term of him, maybe he would have created a complete disaster. Maybe the idea of, his brother having been the president afterwards, and then his other brother having been the president afterwards, well, maybe we wouldn't have been removed from the gold standard in 1971. We wouldn't have had the Vietnam War. So the trajectory of our entire time would have been completely altered. An entire generation of America would not have been confronted with the Vietnam guilt syndrome, would not have been confronted with the massive damage to that generation, all of those young men that were either killed or mutilated or damaged in some other way. But then again, hey, there wouldn't have been as much heroin either that would have came out of that part of the world. Who knows what the illicit drug of choice would have been pushed on us by the military, industrial, intelligence, pharmaceutical, prison complex. And yeah, I just put all those together because, you know what, they all sort of mix and match rather nicely, don't they? So, what else do I have on the agenda? Not a whole lot, I gotta tell you. But I do have some interesting stuff coming up. I am going to try and bring John Barber back on. Maria Heller, I'm trying to nail down a date because, I heard some good things about the rebroadcasts from those shows, so I'm going to bring them back, and we're going to talk about some tougher issues. I'm also going to bring on some more people about the hemp and the natural cures issue, because I have a very limited understanding of these things. I know some particular things, but not enough to stack a radio show, and not enough to come out and discuss this with you guys, in any sort of coherent fashion, in my opinion. But hey, being incoherent, that doesn't stop a lot of other radio hosts, so I don't know why it should stop me, right? Let's see now. I'm going to try and play a clip here. God knows if it'll work, though, because I'll tell you, uncooperative computers have just been the bane of my existence lately. Let's see if we can get something to run. It's loud in my headphones, and not cooperating. Well, that's all right, too. Anyway, so yeah, I do say that the trajectory of our entire history, the trajectory of the history during my lifetime, at any rate, would have been entirely different. Had November 11th, November 22nd, nice. 11/22 is what I was going for, 11/22/63. Had that not occurred, and of course, had not the shots been fired at the Ambassador Hotel, had not Dr. King been killed, etc., etc., I think we'd have a completely different society that would have been driven by entirely different standards at this point, ladies and gentlemen. But again, one idiot's opinion, right? So let's see. Skype messages also. All right. Yes, I will gladly Skype you when I'm done. And what do we have here? Michelle. You know, the whole thing with Michelle is that I decided that I didn't want her to co-host with me anymore. I have reasons for that. And no need to really elaborate on that. I just wanted to go back to doing the shows myself, and I want to go back to doing some of the more interview-oriented things that I was doing, although I'm trying to look for newer, more interesting guests. Heard about a guy today, actually, who was pretty interesting, who was going to discuss the whole King Kill 33 thing, which is linked to the JFK assassination as well, but in general, it talks about the, assassination culture, the designs of those who are actually pulling the strings, and why it is that there are so many continuous aspects that seem to keep reoccurring in all of these sacrificial situations. Now, on that line, there is something else that I'm not sure if I'm going to devote an entire show to it without a panel. And I'm trying to assemble a panel. And by the way, if you guys have any suggestions, by all means, either send me a message on Facebook, which on Facebook, of course, I'm just Chuck Ochelli, or you can find the Ochelli Effect. Either way, I'll be glad to take messages that way. Or you can email me at chuck1972 at lycos.com. And I'll tell you what suggestions I would really like are some people to discuss occult topics. Generally, I would like to discuss the nameless religion. Now, if you mention that to someone who is in the occult world, let's just say, you may find their ears perk up a little bit, and that's what I wanted to discuss, the nameless religion and the device of population control via religion, and why this is important, and what it is those on the other side actually believe about the world around us. I know that this is a bit of an esoteric topic, and I know it's a little bit out there and kind of coast-to-coast AM-y for some people, maybe a little Art Bellish, whatever you want to say. Maybe it's a little Ground Zero-ish, which, is a much better show. But, yeah, I'm not going to do the alien thing, but I will definitely discuss the occult, and I've got my reasons for that. Also, there's been some recent interest and some contacts with me about covering the Manson topic, and how I think that, effectively that was another sham and another sort of, let's add another poor person who is obviously problematic in society to the, the narrative about the culture collapsing. I mean, honestly, it really was the death knell of the supposed hippie culture when the LaBianco Tate murders went, national and all that kind of good stuff. People don't really recall, because it was previous to this sort of semi-electronic age where we dealt with the O.J. Simpson trial and all that, which, by the way, was something I didn't get to about the CNN documentaries, is not only are they studying, the 60s and, and World War II and, interesting historical events that did have a worldwide effect, but I kid you not, they also spent a couple hours on the Bronco chase. The documentary was longer than the chase itself, and, I don't know how many of my listeners remember that, but man, oh man, a lot of people were glued to their TV over that one. A recent anniversary passed, too, in the past few days. We had the anniversary of the downing of JFK Jr.'s plane, and that seemed to go by pretty much without a whole lot of notice, according to a lot of the media that I was paying attention to. I've always been kind of, on the fence about that one, because although Kennedy Jr. could have posed a significant threat to certain individuals in the establishment, I think on the other hand, he would have been nothing more than a minor disruption. Although I got to say that if people's votes actually counted, he could have easily won the popularity contest for president. But again, we all know that the president has become pretty much a puppet post, and the significance of that would not be as watershed as I think a lot of people do believe. But there are a lot of strange aspects to that incident. There's even a point at which Senator Kennedy had to get involved actually with contacting people at the White House because the National Guard wasn't cooperating, and somehow or other, even though this was a civilian air crash, control of information being vetted to the mainstream media was handed over to the Pentagon very early on, and they didn't even start the search, even though we all know that airplanes can be tracked very well. Even back then, radar technology and the use of what they call an NTAP would have been very, very easily accessible to all the people that were concerned. And with the Coast Guard, with the Coast Guard, and at one point the Pentagon getting involved and everything else, the fact that it took them, something like 18 hours to actually begin searching in this relatively small area that was the most logical choice from the get-go to look at means that essentially I think, somebody didn't want him to survive, and I don't think that Carolyn Bessette or her sister were a significant threat. And there's a lot of strange things about this. Of course, it was blamed on, those reckless, crazy Kennedys, children of bootleggers who, lived crazy, dangerous lifestyles and all that kind of good stuff. But I really advise people to be very, very careful about that kind of stuff because, Joseph P. Kennedy's involvement with bootleggers was no more significant than pretty much every other businessman of his era. If you want to look at stuff that was really criminal, that was really innovative, in fact, you look to Kennedy's manipulation of the stock market, which is where his real money was made. And of course, he was also brought in to consult about creating most of the rules that were supposed to govern those thieves on Wall Street anyway. And why? Well, you hire a thief to catch a thief in a lot of cases, and this is why Kennedy was brought in. Of course, at the time he was doing his manipulations, there were no laws per se against what he was doing, so it was fully fine. But a lot of things have been blown out of proportion, and a lot of things have been built upon that. I mean, the interaction with Kennedy and organized crime previous to his taking office as president is either fictitious in some cases or rather shoddy, rather spurious, because it was more coincidental than anything else. Mobsters go for glamorous women, and Kennedy went for glamorous women to some degree. Of course, that's another thing that's been blown up out of proportion. I don't think that he was, this paragon of virtue in any way, shape, or form, but I also don't like the idea that, they pretty much throw as much mud against the wall on him as they can, because after all, if he was nothing but an irresponsible playboy, he was nothing but a sex fiend and a drug addict, and and had no real sense of doing anything right for the American people, then I guess it's no big deal that he caught a bullet in the head anyway. A jealous husband would have done that to him eventually, right? It was physically impossible for him to have carried on some of the affairs that they talk about him having. Of course, if you listen to the testimony of the doctors during the House Select Committee, you could understand that it is a scientific fact that the man had Addison's disease, and look that up if you want to see what that does to a body. And if you look up the drug cocktail that he was taking, yes, through Dr. Feelgood, that's for sure, in order to keep him going, in order to keep him from dying in some cases, and in order to deal with the pain from an unstable back, which he had previous to World War II, but of course, was absolutely aggravated during the PT-109 incident, which was blown up a bit bigger, obviously for political gains, to get him some traction among people that honored his military service and all that kind of stuff. It's easy to see that somebody would seize upon that and, capitalize on it, which they did. But at the same time, he was legitimately injured and was legitimately a war hero as well, which was, one of those things that was sort of a prerequisite at that time. You had to at least show some sort of military service, in order to get the public support as president. Not everybody was Dwight D. Eisenhower, mind you, but, it was one of those things that was really, really helpful. Just like having a wife that looked like you got along with really, really well was helpful too, regardless of how many mistresses you had. And believe me, Kennedy wasn't the only powerful man to have mistresses. To this day you can find powerful men that have mistresses, dalliances, interactions with women that aren't their wives. In some cultures it's actually a necessity to, sort of have a guma on the side. Because otherwise, you're not a man's man if you don't have a wife and a girlfriend. But, Kennedy was Irish, not Italian, so. Anyway. And that's another thing. Those that think that, Kennedy was just one of the elites that caught a bullet just like an elite would deserve and all that good stuff, they forget that, that Irish Americans at that time really were not part of the elite club. They never would be invited into the most, inner sanctum, inner circle areas of any of these societies or roundtable groups, realistically. Even when they were allowed to attend certain places and everything else, they don't end up in those, special rooms with those special people making special deals. And the fact that he was a Catholic was held against him. You can find stuff that was, being publicized at that time where there was plenty of prejudice against him being a Catholic. And believe me, I have no affinity for Catholicism or Catholics in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, I don't hold it against anybody if they have those particular beliefs either. Though it's a bit of a sticking point with some people that I've been trying to deal with lately as well. But, we all change over time as well. I got to tell you that probably about 10 years ago, regardless of my own past indiscretions, I probably would not have been in favor of the rather liberal sort of drug laws that I think need to exist at this point. I don't see the point of making any illicit drug illegal. I do at the same time think that there should be an age restriction on it because, after all, people are not fully developed in their faculties, until some years later. You can't let children just have a hold of every single thing in the world. But at the same time, and on the same hand, if the world doesn't have sort of a negative, boy, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is here. But if there's not sort of a negative connotation to the use of certain things, I mean, in many countries, alcoholism is not a big problem because, wine is a common thing. It's not a party thing. There's still alcoholics, but you don't see the massive amount of problems like you see in places where it's being controlled much heavier. And we tried prohibition with that. It didn't work out so well. And hell, for every government that claims it's having problems collecting taxes, if easily affordable and readily taxable substances were available to the public, and if there was a safe, legal way that you could do that without getting yourself in trouble and everything else, first of all, you take some of the thrill from it for initial seekers of pleasure and what have you. And, but then again, I'm also one of these people that thinks that, freedom is freedom. And, you're free to be an idiot. You're free to kill yourself. You're free to be stupid. And, and I'm free not to be. So I don't see any point in any of these drug laws anyway. And, marijuana and hemp and all that are also bigger issues because the medicinal purposes of them. Like I said, this is something I'm not deeply initiated in, although, I've had my experiences with people trying to explain this stuff to me in the past, and to be honest with you, I used to laugh at it until I saw some very reasonable people explaining some very reasonable uses for things and actually introducing me to individuals that feel better, have been cured, have been relieved of symptoms, have had their lives improved by a plant. And, after all, whether you're a biblical Christian or you're just somebody who believes that the earth is the earth and what naturally comes from it should be embraced, then either way, where is the moral conundrum involved with that plant? I don't get it. And I'm glad to see more and more places legalizing it, allowing it for medical use, allowing it for recreational use, etc., etc. It's a plant. So what the hell? But then again, like I said, some years ago I wouldn't have had that attitude, so things are developing. Also upcoming, I'm definitely going to bring back Larry Woods again, and I'm hoping to get some people, and that, you guys can contact me on this as well, because I want to get into a discussion about Egypt and the sort of fallacies that have been presented to us by many people who have claimed to be experts on the culture, et cetera, et cetera. They're misinterpreting a whole lot of the more mystical, and I'm using that word for lack of a better word, mystical aspects of the Egyptian society, the culture, and the religions. And I do say religions. Anyhow, let's see if we can get that clip to play one more time. Because I have now allowed everything to close up, and I have my player closed up, so let's see if we can reopen it, and I can get to this piece of news that somebody asked me for earlier, because, let's see, where are you? Nope. Well, there was an incident over the past couple of days. Now I'm going to get into an interesting topic, hopefully. Of course, whenever I start to discuss Palestine or Israel, it seems as though I can't win regarding my viewpoints there. But generally speaking, I see nothing but criminal activity by a criminal state, and that state is Israel. And there is no amount of justification that can be had for the concentration of and oppression of the Palestinian people. And it's not just Palestinian Muslims, by the way. I've actually personally known Palestinian Christians who felt the same oppression, were dealt the same sort of pains that everyone else talks about regarding the so-called Muslim population. It's not a Muslim population exclusively. There's a significant number of Christians which are pretty much in the area where olive trees grow in an area called Bethlehem at this point. Let's see, where are you? All right. Now I can't pull up what I wanted to pull up. Of course. Anyway, let's see if I can just at least get that one article about the Israeli situation. Also, by the way, I don't know if you guys heard earlier, but of course, Johnny Winter passed away. And I got to say that was kind of not a shock, but at the same time, I know there was a tour being planned and all that kind of stuff, and I had heard recently that he was sort of coming around to our way of seeing the world in a way, which is that, pretty much most of the established, media and points of authority have pretty much been lying to us for a very long time. I don't know if that was a new sort of view from Mr. Winter or not, but it was one of those things that somebody who I knew was his nephew or something like this. The guy has the same last name. It's just a guy I've known for years, and I happen to know that he's related to both Johnny and Edgar. Was telling me that, that as crazy as I sound sometimes, it seems like some of his family, including Johnny, were coming around to the way of thinking that this guy seems to think I'm part of, which is interesting in and of itself. The way that some people seem to think that people like myself believe about certain things, everything in the world is not fake. They mix truth with the lies. Everything in the world is not a cartoon. But 9/11 was an inside job, and Oswald wasn't guilty, and the Vietnam War was a terrible hoax and another self-inflicted wound on this nation, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, let's see. Well, this was an interesting thing as well, but I don't know if it'll play or not. This is about the Persian Gulf, and this was a piece of footage I got from, I think it was RT. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I surrender, because what is this doing?
Say it is a routine mission. Let's talk more on this. I'm joined now by Karen Katowski, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel who worked in the Pentagon and the National Security Agency. Well, this new move of warships into the Gulf, as well as the latest massing of U.S. troops in Israel, so we've just been hearing about in that report, they are simply routine missions according to Washington. Are they?
Well, periodically we end up with 3 carriers in that region. And periodically we stoke the fires of conflict, it seems.
Alright, I'm sorry, that's chopping up too. You guys have probably already heard about that anyway. Hey, man, oh man, oh man. Alright, I surrender to the clips. I'm not playing them. So, back to my other discussions. Don't even remember where I quite was. But, for those that say that that these historical events are not worth discussing or not worth dissecting, and claim that everything is just a falsehood being heaped upon us. It's not all a falsehood, but you do have to very selectively sort of sift through the nonsense, the stream, and like I said, that whole CNN thing is a funny example, because even if you turn on their sister network, that headline news network or whatever, they run those A&E type. And I call them A&E type because for years A&E ran nothing but these, what South Park referred to as murder porn, where you have husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, etc., etc. Excuse me. Going on, and, they unravel these murder mysteries and so on and so forth. Gee, my throat's closing up too. Lovely day. So, it seems to me as though the so-called news agencies are now becoming what we've always said they were, which is just, other sort of cartoon networks. At least that's what I call them, and that's why, quite honestly, when I want to amuse myself anymore, I just turn on cartoons, because it's a whole lot easier to know I'm watching an animated product as opposed to watching the selected meat puppets with their bleach blonde hair and et cetera, come on and spout the same old rhetoric over and over again and give me the same old examples of who is supposed to be virtuous and who is not, and who is my enemy and who is not, and so on and so forth. So, I prefer Peter Griffin to Bill O'Reilly. My fault, I guess. So, let's see. anybody who wanted to know about how my son is doing, he's doing very, very well. He's kind of loud and still has plenty of funny looks on his face. Everybody liked that photograph that I put up when he was first born. He had a kind of an odd look on his face then, and believe me, they're getting odder. He looks past people, it seems like, and although they tell me that he shouldn't be interacting, he does seem to. So there you go. Plus he's eating more, and I've at least successfully avoided getting him the Hep B vaccine. They did get away with shooting him up with some vitamin K, unfortunately, but that kind of happened before I knew what was going on, and so there you go. Let's hope I can keep him undamaged. So I'm waiting for Dylan to rejoin me here. And I've got to say that, again, he's an interesting guy to watch. Like I said, Barry Prince brought him up. Other people have brought him up on the show before, and you guys have heard him before. He often wants to pick my brain about the JFK thing, but at least we went over a few other topics earlier. So we didn't entirely drown you in JFK this show. There will be other JFK shows, but I'm trying to split it up a little bit. Don't know if I mentioned earlier, but definitely going to have probably Roger Landry on for part of the show on Tuesday again, like I usually do. I think you guys enjoy him, though. I certainly do, whether you do or don't. So Landry will be on, and then we're gonna definitely talk some hemp, because I need to get educated on the subject a bit more. Like I said before, it's something that's newly ingrained in me, that there's absolutely no reason for any of the vilification of a plant that has gone on for so long. Regardless of what the oil clubs of America and elsewhere like to have us believe about it and everything else. I mean, the textile use, the medical use of it. Where is it that we can really truly argue with this? That I do not know. Sure, I tried to join a caller in, but couldn't get them. Anybody who else wants to come in, by the way, 718-717-8296. I'm told the phones are working. Go ahead and hit me up if you like. And, of course, if you have me on Skype, you can just call me and I'll drop you in on the call, so long as you're an identified number, because if you're an unidentified number, as Jimmy was telling us for weeks on the After the Last Cup show, an unidentified caller forces you to wind up dropping the call to the network, so you have to identify yourself if you're coming on there. And instead of asking me questions via text on Skype where I get distracted and have to read them, I'd really actually appreciate it if you just called in and asked your question, because as I've said many times, my eyesight's not so great and I don't like being distracted. I can run my mouth, but it's hard when I'm trying to squint and lean forward and everything else, and I can't even get near my own microphone. So let us see what else we have. Maybe I'll try something novel here, because it seems as though I can get up my text stuff. So I might actually try to read it for you, which is not always the best thing for me to do. But what the hell, if I can't actually play the sound clips, maybe I can read something of interest here. Well, it's either that or I could go on, with some more JFK stuff, which I'm sure everybody would love to have me do. Let's see.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Hey Dylan, there you are.
Sorry, dinner took longer than I thought.
Not a problem, sir. Actually, I was trying to pull up some sound clips and couldn't get them up. I was trying to get the thing on RT there about the Gulf, and actually part of the headline was something like Iran is not a sitting duck, but it wouldn't play for me.
Send me the link and I'll play it.
Well, you know what? That's okay. Let's just continue on with our discussion anyway.
Okay, what were you guys discussing?
Oh, us guys. It's just been me running my mouth since you left.
Oh, I didn't know if you had callers or not.
No, I didn't get any callers.
Sorry, I left you hanging.
I found something that might be interesting.
Yeah. What were you saying, Dylan?
Sorry, I left you hanging.
No, not a problem, man. Not a problem. Like I said, when you got stuff to do, it's cool. But what else is on your mind today? Anything else, or did you want to just continue on with the JFK thing, or what?
I was reading an article about another jetliner crash.
Well, the Malaysian crash?
Another one.
Another one? Well, this is news to me. Tell me about it.
All we know is it was also over the Ukraine.
So wait a minute. We have the shot down Malaysian plane over the Ukraine, and now another plane is down somehow or other over the Ukraine?
Another plane was shot. We do not know anything else.
Who's reporting that, Dylan?
Jones Corp.
Oh my. Well, I you know what? I really don't want to rely on them as a primary source. I'd like to find somewhere else where they got it from. And
well, they put good news out. They just interpret it badly.
Well, yeah, but sometimes they also don't put good news out, to be honest with you. That's my opinion. Let me see what I can do here. If I try and do something with text, I might actually be able to pull it up. So, but what did you read about this one? I mean, it was just happened, or when did it happen?
I'm reading one that got shot down 7 hours ago, which was the one we were talking about, and then Jones Corp and I feel like it was RT are both saying that another one got shut down, but I don't remember if I've seen it from RT yet or not.
All right, well, I've got Ukraine 295 on Malaysia, plane shot down over east. Let's see. Actually, yeah, the ABC News thing is from the AP. Let's see. A Malaysian Airlines passenger plane carrying 295 people was shot down over war-torn eastern Ukraine on Thursday. Ukrainian officials said, and both the government and the pro-Russian separatists fighting in the region denied any responsibility for downing the aircraft.
Probably because they didn't. Probably because they might not have done it. They assume it was them, but
yeah.
What motivation would they have?
This ridiculous thing. Well, this is the blame game that's going to go on. Let's see what else we got here.
Well, it's the same blame game. What's going to go on when the U.S. tries to blame an attack on Bashar al-Assad?
Oh yeah, well. Let's see, an Associated Press counted at least 22 bodies at the wreckage site 40 kilometers, which is 25 miles, from the Russian border. The village is under the control of pro-Russian separatists, and the area has seen severe fighting between the two sides in recent days. Rebel fighters at the scene of the wreckage had piled up victims' possessions into heaps and threatened reporters attempting to film footage. The insurrection started after pro-Russian President Viktor
Yanukovych.
I'm just having trouble reading it.
Wait, they're calling him pro-Russian? That's kind of funny.
The insurrection started after pro-Russian president, yeah, that's what it says, was driven from office in February by a protest movement among people wanting closer ties with the European Union instead of Russia.
Wait.
I'm just reading the AP thing here.
I know that, but I can poke a million holes in that. Hey, why would anyone want a closer relation with the EU?
Well, there was that whole thing, if you don't remember. I mean, there was the whole, well, this is Putin trying to take control. Well, we really want to join the EU. Well, actually, there's a legitimate sort of cultural reason for this, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. This copy's not so hot. Let me see what else I got here.
The AP is one of the biggest propaganda machines out there. What do you expect?
Well, of course, but I'm just personally, physically made ill by Reuters, so I kind of skipped over that one. Let's see, Malaysian passenger plane crashed in Ukraine. Well, there's the Huff Post if we want to go for that.
They're better.
Yeah, well, let's see. Oh, wait, is this a new one? At least 4 escaped from Russia. CNN.com. 4 crew members escaped from the crash of a Ukrainian transport plane. Well, here's a Ukrainian transport plane. Let's see about this.
Yeah, there was a passenger one and then that one.
Yeah, let's see now. Okay, well, this is CNN.
Oh,
God. Well,
do you want to? Is there? Can I jump to another topic real fast?
Well, 1 second. Let me just read this. 4 crew members escaped, and 2 others were taken hostage from the crash of a Ukrainian transport plane hit by a rocket over the Luhansk, L-U-H-H. Let me try again. L-U-H-A-N-S-K region.
I'm not even going to try that.
Nope. A Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman, Vladsov
Too many difficult names.
R-Y-O-W said Tuesday. All 8 on board the plane downed Monday were Ukrainians, he said. In addition, 2 others remain missing. He said it's unclear who is responsible for taking hostages. You know what I'm seeing here is a whole bunch of, now we're going to talk about downed planes, hostages being taken, people being engaged in all sorts of, innocent bystander being struck by blah, blah, blah behavior. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
do you want to move?
Go ahead, sure.
Do you want to move to, the Gaza thing?
Yeah, that's another thing I was trying to pull up a video on, but go right ahead.
I want to do my own show on that too, eventually.
On Gaza itself, or on the Palestinian-Israeli problem?
Yeah, that whole problem. Where do you stand on it?
Where do I stand? I just mentioned this before you came back on, but I mean, I was saying that it's just another case of a criminal government oppressing the people that they can oppress because they have the support of places like the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And, but that opens up a whole raw topic, to be honest with you. What do you think about it?
I think that it's, like you said, just a corruption and a criminal government trying to control people. But I think it's more than that. I think it's a phase in this chess game that we were talking about before I left. Mm-hmm. And it's another peace movement.
Well, I hate to do this, but it is a Reuters thing. Jerusalem/Gaza, July 17th, Reuters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday instructed the military to begin a ground offensive in Gaza. An official statement from his office said, and let's see, Reuters. Okay, witnesses and Gaza residents reported. Reuters witnesses, that's an interesting classification of people. Reuters witnesses and Gaza residents reported heavy artillery and naval shelling and helicopter fire along the Gaza border. The Prime Minister and Defense Minister have instructed the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, to begin a ground operation tonight in order to hit the terror tunnels from Gaza into Israel, the statement said.
I just got an article from Sylvain. He sent it to me 20 minutes ago. The ground invasion has begun.
Sorry, my article's 3 hours old. Okay, related. Gaza rocket hits Israel on humanitarian... as humanitarian lull ends. Blind guy reading, sorry. Okay. Israel and Palestinian militants in the densely populated enclave have begun fighting a cross-border war for 10 days. The Israeli military says Gaza militants have fired more than 1,300 rockets into Israeli-Palestinian Health officials say. Wait, let me read that again.
Wait.
The Israeli military says Gaza militants have fired more than 1,300 rockets, I was right, into Palestinian. Health officials say 233 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli air and naval strikes.
That was a mouthful.
One Israeli civilian has been killed by fire from Gaza. Okay. Quick check of the math here. 1,300 rockets into Israel. One Israeli citizen has been killed.
That math seems a little off to me. I'm horrible at math, but that just doesn't sound right to me.
Well, look, what do you got? A bunch of guys with like less eyesight than me firing these rockets? I mean,
or people with the ability to press a button as well as me.
Well, first of all, 1,300 rockets. Are they for real on that? 1,300? That's a lot of rockets, first of all. And second of all, the inaccuracy of the shooting there is remarkable. I mean, I thought Oswald missing the car completely and striking the curb where Tate was standing was bad. But no, 1,300 bullets, actually, bullets relatively speaking, going after a population and killing one civilian? Okay, a statement from the Israeli military said the operation will include infantry, armored corps, engineer corps, artillery and intelligence combined with aerial and naval support.
So war.
Yeah, but that's like, land, sea, air. Okay. And, of course, intel, which, tell me that wasn't already there. An engineer simply means we're going to, definitely wire things for explosives and destroy stuff on the ground in an organized fashion. That's all that means. Oh, boy. Before dawn on Thursday, about a dozen Palestinian fighters tunneled under the border, emerging near an Israeli community. At least one was killed when Israeli aircraft bombed the group, the military said.
Go ahead. Wait, they killed their own people? Firing on a heavily populated area?
No, this is probably just my bad reading here, okay? I'm trying, but...
Can you send me the article?
Sure, I'll send you the article, but I'm telling you, it's...
Man, you weren't kidding when you said Reuters sucked.
Well, look, I got more than one reason for saying I don't like Reuters, and this is, let's be fair, I'm actually reading because it's larger print on the MS, let me go up to the top here. On the MSN News site, okay? So, the larger print there, but it's still the Reuters story, so, I don't know. But it sounds to me, go ahead.
3 hours ago, Al Jazeera reported Israeli tanks entered the Gaza Strip.
3 hours ago, Al Jazeera reported that, huh?
Yeah, that's the number I got.
Well, look, if they were firing 1,300 rockets and have to kill one guy, that might have been a problem. But, I mean, again...
Well, you gotta look at what they've done.
But you see why... But that's my point. Look, and do you see why I said just a little while ago, people, that when I want to entertain myself, I watch cartoons because the news is basically turned into a big cartoon anyway? Here's the thing. They have Palestinians tunneling under the fence. They're popping out of holes, and the Israeli Air Force is basically dropping stuff on them. What's wrong with that picture?
Can you paint it one more time? My Skype dropped out.
Well, 1,300 rockets, you kill one person, first of all. Second of all, you have Palestinians tunneling under a border fence to pop out on the other side, and some of them were killed by the Air Force, basically.
Okay, so First question. How did they only kill one person with 1,300 rockets and fighters tunneling under the border and going into a densely populated area? Unless they're the worst military in existence. And I think even the worst could have done better than that.
Well, look, all it is justification for what they're doing right now, I guess, as we speak. But what they were reporting they were about to do, which is to send intelligence, engineers, air, sea, and infantry into yet another, outgunned populace, once again, to further punish the Palestinians for having committed the crime of being born in the wrong place, as far as they're concerned.
At least there's one silver lining out of this.
Oh, tell me what it is.
Palestine could win.
No, they're completely outgunned. This is the thing, man. Is that,
I know they're outnumbered and outmatched, but we know who their allies are, so they might have a chance.
Well, you know what? I want to challenge that. Who are their allies?
Don't they have the guys like Russia and China as their allies? That's what I was reading somewhere. Probably Reuters again.
Well, it might have been a confusing something or other out there, because legitimately speaking, they virtually have no real support. I mean, they have some from the Arab world, obviously. They always have. And this still goes back to the old narrative that we were dealing with, when Yasser Arafat was in charge over there. And he was being, vilified by the mainstream, by the world press, by, every politician who could possibly utter his name and try and point to him as, one of the earlier boogeymen, when they really weren't able to sell us on this whole Middle Eastern problem so much. It's, I don't know, it just turns my stomach every time I look at this stuff. I see these ridiculous stories that are filled with facts that are clearly way the hell off. I mean, 1,300 rockets and you didn't manage to kill more than one person? What are these rockets loaded with? Marshmallow fluff?
Even then, the speed that they would be going at would probably get at least one person.
Well,
at least two.
Well, unless they were bottle rockets and maybe they put a few eyes out and that was about it.
Well, as far as we know, I don't know if Reuters has the information, but do we know how many injuries there have been on Israel's side?
I didn't even want to go into that. I try to read these articles and I'm stopped by stuff like that because I just can't. It's like I can't fathom how this is even remotely the truth anymore. I mean,
Reuters. If what just I read the article a little bit.
Yeah.
Reuters. I wouldn't trust them at that point.
No, but what did I say? Did I just read that badly? Was it that just me reading it terribly?
No, sadly, I kind of wish it was. Yeah. That's really bad journalism. I mean, more CNN bad, or MSNBC bad, or even Fox News bad.
Yeah, and I'll give credit where credit is due. I mean, look, here's ABC News with the, this was a day ago, obviously, but I mean, Israeli strike kills 4 boys playing on Gaza Beach.
Yeah.
I know you saw that story, right?
I saw that story.
All right. So, I mean, it's not crazy. 4 boys who were playing on a beach in Gaza were killed by an Israeli barrage today. This was yesterday, of course. According to witnesses, the latest grim fatalities in the serial battle between Israel and the militant group Hamas. That's an interesting characterization. Because, after all, it's just Hamas who's engaged in the battle, not the civilian population, who in some cases are throwing rocks and getting, shot with pieces of lead and so on. Anyway, the military strike landed near a hotel where many of the foreign media are staying. And the blast and its aftermath were witnessed by some of the media, including ABC News. The boys were between the ages of 9 and 11.
How can they tell that just by looking?
Which thing?
Their age.
They probably collected these facts afterwards. Were between the ages of 9 and 11, and all had 9 and 11, and all had the same last name, and were 2 brothers and 2 cousins. Palestinian authorities said. So that was a statement by Palestinian authorities. See?
Well, there's propaganda on both sides.
Let's see. The first shell killed one of the group of the boys and sent 4 remaining boys sprinting across the beach. Witnesses and Gaza medical sources said. A second shell struck, killing 3 more boys, the witnesses told ABC News. The 5th boy is in critical condition, the medical officials said. And that was yesterday. Is anybody catching the theme that, they're just killing children? Does anybody see that? Is that acceptable now? Because there's a Star of David on your flag? Is that acceptable? Really?
And I got the question posed to me, is it okay to criticize Israel? And my response was, what kind of a question is that? Of course. And we had a long argument about that.
What's this one from?
Same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy as last week.
Well, what can I tell you? It's
I don't know, honestly.
This is the kind of thing that just bugs the crap out of me,
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know. I mean, and the fact is that there's plenty of children that are interesting. Their ages are 9 and 11, but
why is that?
Outside of that,
I get it now.
The continuation of the slaughtering of innocent people throughout the planet is something that needs to be stopped. And I wish I had an answer for that, and I wish I didn't sound like such a hippie when I say that all war needs to come to an end. But it's the truth, man. What is this nonsense really accomplishing outside of terrorizing a population who, I say again, simply committed the crime of being born in a place that was not convenient for other people that really didn't belong in that place anyway? I don't know, man. What do they teach you? Let me ask you this. What do they teach you in school regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at this point?
I actually didn't have history class this year.
But it has to have come up during your schooling. I'm wondering what it's like.
Actually, it never did.
Never does, huh?
No, when I had history class 2 years ago, the Libyan crisis was going on, and the assassination of Gaddafi. Benghazi had just happened.
Oh, well, there's a curious thing. What did they teach you about that? Because that's a whole other interesting study in how people are vilified when they're, from sandy regions. So.
Yeah, they taught us about how evil Gaddafi was.
Well, you realize when I was like your age, here I go with the old man thing again, but when I was your age, Gaddafi was also an evil despot too,
Yeah.
Well, no, President Reagan. If you look back, Reagan authorized airstrikes on Libya and all this other nonsense. There was the whole famous jokes that people made about, this is the line of death. If you cross it, you die, and all that kind of stuff. I think Robin Williams most famously made that joke. And of course, in the mainstream media and even in the goofy culture at the time, there was, the release of Gaddafi Duck was a song. Howard Stern even did a parody of Rockin' in the USA, which was called KILL, Colonel Gaddafi. All this kind of stuff that was, it was out there in the ether, let's just say, for a long, long time. Interesting, though, that when you talk to people from Libya, you find that, they speak multiple languages, they went to free universities.
Oh, yeah, they liked him over there.
Yeah, he wasn't quite the savage maniac, apparently, that even Showtime released a documentary, or played a documentary recently, I should say, all about, the psychotic, cannibalistic rapist that Gaddafi was supposed to have been, and all that good stuff. And I wonder, again, exactly how much of the truth we're being told, because,
Are we ever being told the whole truth about it?
Well, never, but I mean, but you got to kind of look at this stuff and wonder exactly how far gone it is. And then, of course, every time now, because we are in the digital age, there's always going to be a video released. We were treated to the hanging of the so-called Saddam Hussein figure. We were treated to the brutalization of the Gaddafi figure, of course. And I'm not even saying that he was a good guy or anything like that. I'm just saying that, again and again, it seems as though our assets are poking their noses in places they don't belong on behalf of people we don't belong being on behalf of, continuously.
Yeah, that was kind of a tongue twister for me. It went over my head, but I kind of understand. What you were saying, we're always vilifying somebody.
Well, we're always vilifying
in the back pocket of our people.
Well, right, and of course the most educational thing as far as Gaddafi is concerned in my head is that he wasn't being compliant with the international bankers.
Yeah,
and
that alone is enough to kill a guy.
Yeah, that'll usually get a leader killed. Does anybody remember Abraham Lincoln? Or look, if you want to look up something interesting, there was a book on JFK called Battling Wall Street. You can find out a little bit about what he was doing regarding that stuff as well, and that might have had a little more something to do with his assassination than people might want to imagine, but hey, what can you do? So, Dylan, what before we get going, because I only got like 7 minutes left here, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners are probably happy there's only a few minutes left. But what do you have coming up on the Truth Speaks Network before you go ahead and join Shake and Wake?
Tonight or tomorrow, I will be recording an interview with Roger Landry. And that's all really I've got coming up. I don't want to announce any guests because both times I've announced guests here, they've both canceled on me.
Oh, well, look at that. My bad luck spreads to you, sir. I apologize.
The one I was gonna do the debate with canceled on me at 3:29 for a 3:30 show.
What happened with Bill Murray?
He came on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he came on a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and you can find the Truth Speak stuff. Even a couple of shows are sitting there with me running my mouth if you want to listen to those. But you can skip over those and check out other ones. Those are on YouTube. And I think all you got to do is just go to YouTube and search for The Truth Speaks for now, right?
Yeah. Chuck, I want to do a show with you tomorrow if you're available.
Well, depending on the time and the topic. I'm sure I can be.
4:45, and I actually want to do a show with you and James Impending on the Bush family and their crimes.
Well, that's definitely worth a show. I would love to do that, but 4:45 is too early because normally I get out of work right at 4:30, and it takes me a little time to get myself together and stop the bleeding. So,
do you work Saturdays?
Nope.
Do you want to do this Saturday at like noonish?
That's a possibility. I have my show at 8 p.m., of course.
Of course, and I'd like to join you for that, depending on what you got going.
Yeah, we'll see, because I got a couple of possibilities for Saturday, and I'm not sure if I can quite nail down the guests I want to nail down. If I can, we might have a really interesting roundtable on Saturday.
And if we can't, then I'm here for backup. I sit on the computer all day, so I'm here for backup.
You know who I'm looking for, actually, is some people to discuss some esoteric topics, because I don't seem to have people that want to come on the air that have the courage to discuss, the truth behind Satanism and demonology and some of the other religions and religious factions that exist in the darker netherworld there. It seems as though I got plenty of people who talk to me off the air about it, but not too many who want to come on the air. So I'll tell you what, I'll put it out to you like I did to the listeners earlier. If anybody wants to contact me regarding that, I would definitely love to engage a good roundtable with it. And I'm not even looking necessarily for people that are all on my side about this or anything. I just want people that have some kind of knowledge on the dark arts a bit. So if you have people in that vein, I'll be glad to take them on as well, Dylan.
Have you talked to James about it?
Well, the James being a very, very pronounced Christian, I didn't know that he would really want to discuss that. But then again, you know what? It might be really interesting to have him on for that.
I mean, hey, worst you can do is say no.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we're talking about James Impending Revelation, who's the guy I've had on here before for a 2-hour interview and has also appeared on other shows. He does NWO Truth Radio, and he's definitely a good guy.
He co-hosts with me once in a while.
Right, and actually did one of the shows, the Fukushima show that we did.
That was fun. We got to do an update to that.
That was fun, and a lot more has happened since then, so we might want to get in there. But I would like to get some people from Japan to come on that show. That would be nice.
I can get somebody from Japan. I'll look around.
Yeah, I mean, I discussed that briefly with James Corbett when I had him on, and Jim Funky joined in, actually, and asked those questions about that, too. And we really didn't get very far with him on it. He does have the Fukushima Update website, though, which people can check out. I don't know exactly where he stands, but good.
We don't really need somebody from Japan, because what's happened lately? I mean, we had the fire literally the day after the show, which me and James just sat there laughing for a few minutes. I couldn't believe that there was a fire the day after we did the show about Fukushima.
Yeah, but I mean, almost every day, if you talk to people on the ground, almost every day there's some sort of development there, regardless of what TEPCO wants to show us or not.
Oh, and then there was the 6.8 earthquake there last week.
Yeah, another issue.
Yeah, they were evacuating because they were preparing for a tsunami.
Gee, tsunami.
How convenient would that be?
Convenient for who? You know?
That's the question.
So, look, in closing, I just want to say that, you can check out the SoundCloud for the Ochelli Effect if you want. You just find Chuck Ochelli on there. You can join that for free, by the way, people. I have been paying for it, and it kind of sucks because not gotten a whole lot of participation on it, and I would really like some. You can also find me on Facebook. You can find Dylan on Facebook, too. And, like I said before, he's also got the YouTube thing going, and Shake and Wake Radio is coming up soon. Looks like 2 weeks away now, although I've gotten a couple of different dates as to when it's going to be ready to go. Might hear more on that on Tuesday if I get my way. And I already mentioned, I'm going to have Barry Prince back on also. And Larry Woods is going to return at some point. We're going to discuss Egypt. That actually might be a good jumping off point to start to get into the dark religions and, the discussion of the greater esoteric topics. So we'll see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, we're just about out of time. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, sir?
Not really.
All right, well, good.
You can just check us out on YouTube, Truth Speaks. I don't know why I'm plugging it again. You already did that, but...
Sorry, I just try and throw those things in before my obnoxious bumper kicks in. And, of course, after my show, stick around for What Matters Worldwide Live with Vince Easley. And there actually might be an interesting sort of semi-esoteric thing coming up shortly that he was helping me put together earlier. That would be nice as well. We'll discuss the Kill 33 thing. Thanks for listening. Live about radio. Ochelli Effect. Bye.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things.
I said to myself,
how can that be possible? You know, days and the fondle slap of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously,
you don't want you to have
just reads to sources.